This architecture series video will be on date keys. This will be a rather quick video, primarily for those doing SQL or using tools like Power BI or Tableau for reporting. When it comes to reporting, using the calendar can be difficult. Each month has a different number of days, the weeks kind of cross these months and years differently, and doing things like year over year or quarter over quarter calculations can be rather tricky. Let's look at an example within ROC. So here we have two of the metrics tables. We have the actual metric table and we have its value table. Now when you're doing metrics, it's very common that the metric values will be time-based. So we have fields like metric value date time. But in newer versions of ROC, we also have another column called metric value date key. And this will have a value something similar to this. So it'll be year, month, day, 2020-01-31 to represent January 31st of 2020. With this key, we can then link over to another model within ROC called the analytics source date. And so there is a row in this model for every day in the last 200 years. So it goes roughly 100 years in the past and roughly 100 years into the future. So the actual dates will depend on when you installed ROC, and it is configurable, but you can pretty much guarantee that any date that you need, each day will be in this table. There's roughly about 100,000 rows. So let's look inside this table and kind of get an idea of what we have available to us. So here's just a couple rows for far into the future. And as you can see, it too has a date key property that you can link to. So linking your two models together will give you all of these other properties that you can quickly and performantly get to. So you can get things like different formats of dates, which of course you can do in SQL, but it does cost you a little bit. So in this case, you can just join and get these values very, very quickly. But you can also get other values like the number of the day within the month or within the year, or even within your fiscal period. So there's configuration in ROC where you can define what your fiscal period is and basically regenerate the values of this table to match your fiscal time period. You can get to determine if this is the last day in the month. Again, you could do that in SQL, but it'd be very slow. Moving over to the right a bit, you can get other information like the Sunday date, which is very common within churches, which month it is for giving, basically just which calendar week it is, which month it is. Lots of different information in here. And then you can get that same information from quarters and also from your fiscal time periods. You can also determine if this is in the first half of the year or the second half of the year. Again, this stuff can be done in SQL, but it's so much faster to do it this way. You can also get indicators of whether there were holidays for this date or if there was a holiday in the current week of this date, and also determine if Easter is that date or if it's in that week. So again, that's a very tricky one to do in SQL to determine, hey, is this date that I have, is Easter in the same week as this date? That would take quite a bit of calculation and would be very slow. And you can do the same thing for Christmas. Now the last column in this table seems a little tricky or seems a little confusing. It's just simply called count, and all the rows will have the same value of 1. So what this allows you to do is to sum based on that. So if you have two different dates, you could get all of the records between those two different dates and then just sum on that count, and that'll give you the number of days in between those. So there's a lot of really cool little tricks you can do with this table to make your SQL statements or Power BI or Tableau much faster. So these again are the columns that are inside that table, just in case you want to pause the video to take a look at all of those again. And these are the tables that have those keys that allow you to link over to this table. So things like interactions, financial transactions, attendance, of course, communications, metric values, connection requests, benevolence requests, steps, financial pledges, registrations, and a lot of the analytics table. Now, you should note here that some of these tables actually have two columns to link over to it. Take steps, for instance. Steps commonly have a start date and an end date. Each of those dates have a date key, so you can link them independently over to that analytics table. So that's a quick overview of this table. Knowing that it exists and how to use it can really significantly open up what you're able to do within SQL and make sure that your SQL calculations are much faster.